Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Whiskey Wednesday night on the Mash and Drum. It is Off the Still, episode 2, since I brought it back. We have a very, very special guest here tonight, one I've been talking about for a couple of weeks here, guys. Dan McKee, Michter's Master Distiller, will be joining us here in a little bit. We're going to be diving into a little bit of everything, guys. The core range, what Michter's is distilling now, what they're what they're bringing to the table later on, a little bit more about the older expressions, Shanks, Bombergers, a little bit of the history. Tonight, if you're a bourbon geek like I am, it's going to be a really fun night. And Dan has been super gracious with putting his time, making time for me and for all of you, and putting together what should be a really fun live stream tonight. So I'm really, really excited to dive into everything. But before we do that, of course, let's say hi to a couple folks in the chat here. John Matlick in the house. What is going on, man? Ham Turkey is here, hoping for some good insight into Michter's. Joey B, hello, GC. Always excited for your live streams and appreciate all of your hard work, time, and effort you put into the channel for the fans. Cheers, Jason and the whole Mash and Drum family. Joey B, that means a lot, dude. Thank you so much. James Lay, Que Pasa Peeps, what's going on? Four Leaf Whiskey is here. What is going on, Four Leaf? Nice to see you. James Lay, let's see. John Matlick already said hi. Whiskey Nose is in the house. What's going on? Marty Party, hope you're feeling better. Let's see here. John. Oh, he's saying hi to Stacy. What's up, Stacy? Four Leaf Whiskey, by the way. If you guys don't, if you want to learn a lot more about Irish whiskey and all the amazing Irish whiskeys that are out there, definitely tune into Four Leaf Whiskey. Doug H is here. Travis Robeson, what's going on, good buddy? Jeff Perkins in the house. Should be an interesting conversation tonight for sure. KCD, can I get a ooh yeah? Okay, there you go. Everett Jarvis is here. Sparty on Bourbon in the house. Sandeep Chima is here. Adam Hinson from Flow Rida. How you doing, Adam? Hope you're doing good down there. Peter White, my man in Canada. He's already asking questions. Don't worry. We will get to all this, Peter, for sure. Russ Ellis here. Brian Mackey. He said he's been really looking forward to this one. So have I. Absolutely. Roy R. Does Cocktails is in the house. Deborah C is here. What's up, Deb? Saucy Shane, what's going on, buddy? RJ the Fed, Slap Shots Roadhouse. Dude, can't wait to see you guys at Sagamore. That's right, the Sagamore meetup is days away. Actually, a couple days away. It's crazy how fast it's coming on. But for any of you guys coming to the Sagamore meetup this weekend, I cannot wait to see you guys there, especially Friday night. It's going to be an absolutely, a lot of work went into it, and I think it's going to be a blast. So I can't wait to see all you guys. Raging Irishman, let's see here. A bunch more people coming in. Whiskey Uncensored, another great channel from my man Ben. Ben Drammond is here. Aiden, Smoking Firewater, Jason Mounts, JG, Gary Fancy Franchi, and a lot more people here coming in the chat. I'm just trying to catch up here. Jason Busey is here. He just had a birthday. Happy birthday, Jason. Nice to see you, man. Micah Robinson, and some more people coming in. So yeah, Giselle's birthday says you get mad props for a live stream on an event the same week. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna abandon my live stream, especially when you got Dan McKee on. So tonight, guys, get out your Michter's bottle that you have, whatever you may have, and let's welcome in our guest here. If you guys do not know who Dan McKee is, he was born and bred in Indiana. He's the Michter's Master Distiller. He moved to Kentucky to pursue his dream of making whiskey. Began his career in the bourbon industry as a distillery operator at Jim Beam in Claremont, Kentucky. After 2 years of hands-on experience making some of the industry's leading bourbons and ryes, he was promoted to distillery supervisor at the Booker No Distillery, where he worked for 7 years. At that distillery, Dan reported to Pam Howman and gained experience in all aspects of whiskey distilling. He was brought to Michter's by Mrs. Howman. He played an integral role in assisting with the construction of the company's new Shibley distillery. And along with Miss Howman and Andrea Wilson, he built the company's current production team. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan McKee, Michter's Master Distiller. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. That was a great introduction.
You didn't expect the long intro and the bio.
It's always good to remember. Those are going all the way back to the beginning at 17 years ago. It's a lot of great memories.
I told you I do my homework here. I'm just saying. Well, I got a chance to meet Dan. So Central Ohio Whiskey Society, and a big shout out to anybody from Cows who's watching tonight. Dan McKee came to an event, and we were able to kind of meet and chat a little bit. And Dan did a really amazing presentation about all the stuff going on at Michter's. And I couldn't, I asked him right there, like, hey, would you be open to coming on the channel? He had literally just watched my review of Michter's versus, what was it, Michter's versus Buffalo Trace in a blind.
I think it was.
Yeah, I did a double bass episode, and Michter's for me won. And of course, Dan was like, "Oh yeah, I like that video." So lo and behold, Dan is here now. So Dan, for those of the audience that don't know a lot about you, I know we just went a little bit through your bio, but maybe tell us currently what what you're doing now at Michter's.
Well, I've had the honor of being named Master Distiller. I've been with again Michter's almost 9 years, I guess. It's going by quick in December, and I started here as distillery manager. And when Willie Pratt, our first master distiller, retired, Pam Howman went to master distiller. I went to distiller, and then when she retired, it seems so long ago now, but I think it was like May of 2019. I was named master distiller, and it's been exciting. It's I truly love this industry. I love distilling, and now in my role, I'm in a lot of different aspects of it. The one part we don't really discuss, but I'm also EVP of our production areas, and but there's the overseeing the distilling. Andrea Wilson, our master of maturation, oversees the maturing, and of course we overlap, and we've got a great team here at Michter's. And honestly, that's one of the refreshing parts is the team that we have. We have a very, very diverse, energetic team. And honestly, I drive an hour each way for work, and I still enjoy it. And
that's amazing, man. I wanted to start first, and this might be like the most base level first question for you from Brian Mackey. How does Dan pronounce Michter's? Is it Michter's, or do you say Michters?
No, it's a great question. It is Michter's. So if you go back into our early history, the Pennsylvania history, by the 1950s, a gentleman named Lou Foreman eventually became the owner, and then he renamed the distillery after parts of his two sons' name, Michael and Peter, and then he combined them. Oh, and I've had an N get inserted in there. I always joke, like someone will try to make a German accent. I've had it where they spray you when they say it. So yes, please, it's Michter's.
What does Michter sound like with a German accent? Like Michter's? Like how do you?
I don't want to do it because I'll just look, I can do silly things all the time. I'm going to hold back on this one, but anyway, yeah, they'll spray it when they say it. So it's like, whoa, let's bring it down. But it is Michter's.
All right, Dan. Well, we got Jason Mounts is in the house. He's making his first trip to Kentucky in 2 weeks with some friends. He already has a Michter's tour booked for Saturday, September 2nd. So some people are already lining up. Richie Z says Michter's Distillery for me has been huge for years. Check out their website. Thank you, Richie Z, for posting that. All right, before we get into your core range, because we want to talk about the core range a little bit, we're going to go through as many of the expressions as we can, guys. This is actually, it's a good question for the end. Maybe you want to think on this, Dan, or unless you know now. If you're at a bar and there's no Michter's, what do you order?
That's an easy one. So thankfully, we're in a time of there's so many great whiskeys. Obviously, I have no problem going back. I'm very proud of my time at Jim Beam. Have absolutely no issue going back and enjoying that product, those whiskeys. Also, there's, all the big producers we consider our friends. Something's nice. I don't go out of my way to name names exactly, other than, Jim Beam I have a past with. But if they don't have Michter's, but I for the most part, you're always going to see me drinking a whiskey, though. And if it's an occasion where I'm traveling, I'll try something local. And I don't travel a lot with my job, but there's been a few really cool trips, and and I've gotten to try some nice whiskeys that would be more local. So, again, we're in a time where there's so many high quality whiskeys. It's a hard one. Honestly, the bartenders, right? I always joke I'm the farthest thing from a bartender. I belong on this side of the bar. Ask them, and the cocktails. If it's a really nice cocktail bar, enjoying cocktails is always a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so many good cocktails these days, just with the amount of stuff that bartenders can do, mixologists, bartenders, whatever the hell you want to call them these days.
The willingness to use high quality ingredients is just, was a game changer, and it's, and they just, no matter where I go, it just continues to increase.
I always judge a bartender by what whiskey they like. If I'm asking for an old fashioned, if they grab like something a little bit of a higher proof, I'm like, all right, that's my bartender right there. I like it. All right, so let's talk about the core expressions, because I think the core expressions have definitely evolved over the last several years. I mean, from the bourbon to the straight rye to the American whiskey and the sour mash. Those are basically your 4 core expressions that you could, for the most part, walk into a store, a lot of places, and find most of them. But all of that now is your own distillate, correct?
Yes, we've been distilling on the for years here in Shively on some smaller stills, but by August of 2015 we began barreling with the larger distillery here, and it's been very exciting to see that transition, because just the history itself has that Pennsylvania history, dates back to 1753 as Shanks, and John Shanks, a Swiss Mennonite farmer, began distilling rye whiskey. By the mid 1800s, it was sold to Abraham Bomberger, so Bomberger's Distillery, in which I know we're going to talk about the 2 Shanks and Bombergers here later. But by Prohibition, it closed. Once it reopened by the 50s, I mentioned Lou Foreman eventually became the owner, renamed it Michter's. By 1989, though, the distillery, like a lot of distilleries, went bankrupt because, the industry was really struggling. Clear spirits were more in favor. So essentially, as the distillery went bankrupt, the trademarks were abandoned and essentially lost the history. So in the 90s, when Michter's was our current ownership, we're a family-owned business. Chatham Imports is our parent company out in New York, but as we're a privately owned business with no outside investors, they started on a journey of creating a whiskey brand. And as Joe Malioco, who is our president, was familiar with Michter's, because in the late 70s, he used to sell these little King Tut miniatures, right? So he went through the process of acquiring the trademark, and then working with a good friend of his and mentor, Richard Dick Newman, which CEO of Austin Nichols, Wild Turkey back then, used to run Old Crow, Old Taylor, recommended bringing the distillery to Kentucky. And, we started phase 1, and that's where they went around. Joe and his team went around distilleries here in Kentucky and purchased matured stocks they wanted to emulate. And then that was phase 1. And then early 2000, they took our mash bill, proprietary yeast specifications, and went to a distillery here in Kentucky. They produced for us. And then phase 3 here in our Shively, which is in Louisville, Kentucky, but at the Shively location, they purchased an old parts manufacturer for General Motors that unfortunately went out of business with the 2008 recession. But it was perfect for us as we, started that journey of building our own distillery, because, phase 2, we still didn't have the financial resources. So it's very expensive to build your own distillery. So
you're looking at least.
They bought this building in 2012, and then we just started from there, processing, bottling departments. Then the distillery came online, and we also have one on-site warehouse. Well, from that, the goal was always to make it the same or hopefully better. Either way, it was a success. And, our liquid from Shively has been out on the market for quite some time now, which is extremely it's an awesome feeling. I say awesome all the time, but it's a, it's a great feeling. And, one of the best parts of the job, and I didn't necessarily think this 17 years ago when I started, when I was on third shift, but especially coming to Michter's and actually getting to interact with whiskey lovers all over. It's really cool seeing people enjoy the product that our team here is making. And, that's the reward of all of it. So,
yeah, I mean, the whiskey you guys are churning out, even from the core expressions, I think have definitely improved over the last few years. It's just getting better and better. I think even from the rye to the bourbon, you have the sour mash, and then you have the American, which I think the American whiskey might be one of the most underrated bottles on the market. It is so good. I feel like this is like drinking straight up vanilla ice cream. It is delicious. I did have a question about this one, though, that I got from a couple people. Explain the process for American whiskey. It says unblended American whiskey. I'm assuming it's being aged in a used cask. Does it start in a regular cask and go, or is it all used? Let kind of give a peek behind the curtain of the American whiskey.
Yeah. So this one is our lowest by proof at 83.4. To me, this is a great whiskey to introduce somebody to the category, or maybe had a bad experience and you want to bring them in, because it's really a dessert like whiskey. It's very sweet. You mentioned vanillas. Some people will say butterscotch, but very easygoing. I know Andrea Wilson, again, she loves to, during the summer months, keep this in the refrigerator and serve it chilled,
Oh, okay.
And of course, I was at an event here in Kentucky where I mentioned dessert like whiskey, and next thing I know, I was pouring it on pies for the next half hour because I was doing a tasting table, which is funny because, we'll put here in Kentucky, we enjoy it on anything, in anything. So, but what's really cool about this one, again, it has that nice sweetness and very smooth, but the distillate that's made for it, some of it will go into our new toasted charred American white oak, which is standard for us. Okay. And then some of it will go into our once used Michter's bourbon barrels. Okay. Then they'll age essentially together, and then we bring them back together. Because of that used barrel, we were going to be put in that American category, and we didn't want to be confused with the blended American whiskey, right? That you can add, up to 80% grain neutral spirits, coloring, flavoring, so forth. And we didn't want to be confused with that. And so we were able to get the unblended applied to the label, which is still widely misunderstood. Nobody knows what it means, but we're slowly working at that. But that's what it signifies, is that we're not adding other, components to the whiskey. It's really our new toasted charred barrel and our once used bourbon barrel. And it adds an additional sweetness and roundness to the whiskey. It's a great one to kind of sip in. And traveling now, I've started to see more bartenders using it in cocktails, which is really cool too. So
yeah, I echo Peter White's sentiment here. I would like to see a barrel strength American release at some point. That could be something special, man. I'm just saying.
Like anything, we're always listening,
Yeah.
There's also, I always laugh because lots of great ideas come, and sometimes though you got to keep a straight face because maybe it's already occurring or it's in the works. But sometimes this stuff just never sees the day of light. Or light of day, and you're like, oh, that didn't work. So
yeah, I've talked to some master distillers who, I'm not going to say who or what, but I remember bringing them some ideas that I know viewers had, and they would literally say, you don't want to taste it at this proof or that proof or with that finish or that finish. It tastes terrible.
Well, it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does, and that could be just the way the grain is, just the types of barrels they have. It could be a lot of different factors, but. All right, so partly new barrel for the American and also used barrels for the American. Now, when it comes to one thing I feel like Michter's is very hyper focused on is the type of barrels you use. So talk a little bit about your char level, your toast level. Is it the same for your bourbon and your rye as far as the core expressions, and are they different for your higher age expressions?
Sure. So just our barrel in general, we start out for all of our products like especially let's say the core 4. But the wood being used for the wood staves is air dried and seasoned for a minimum of 18 months, all the way to 60 months. Okay. So air drying and seasoning, of course, is when they take the logs, they bring it in, cut them down to stave sized pieces. They place them in these engineered piles of wood and leave it out to the elements, the rain, the sunshine, snow, so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
During that process, there's several changes that occur. There's a physical, chemical, microbiological change. And during that microbiological change, though, the natural fungi begin to form on the wood. There's a degradation of the wood. And essentially, it's breaking down those tannins, which we know can impart bitterness, astringency. There's also green characteristics of the wood. And during that air drying seasoning, we help lessen that and remove some of that. So just think about that for 18 months. That's a good chunk of time. And for some of our products to say that we're going 24 months, 3 years, all the way up to 60 months, it's a huge commitment and partnership with your cooperages that you work with. But so just at the base, 18 months. The next step in the process, we toast all our barrels before we charring. So toasting, if you're not familiar, is the art of essentially low temperature and time. So the barrel's been raised. They place it over a small oak fueled fire, and that heat will build up and radiate inside the barrel. And as it's doing that, it'll start to penetrate into the wood and break down different layers of the wood, different compounds further and farther into the wood stave. Yep. So, there's hundreds of different toast profiles. You can have lighter toast profiles, fruity notes extracted. You can have heavy toast profiles with like smoky mocha characteristics. Of course, a wide range in between. So it's actually, we focus a lot on the barrel extractives,
Yeah.
And so that really drives a lot of flavor in the whiskey itself. So we've done the toasting, and then we come in with a well-balanced char, because we don't want to come in too heavy, because we don't want to damage the layers we just spent toasting, right?
Yep.
And then once we achieve that, we're ready for barrel entry and so forth. But we use that for all of our products. Now we do use different species of oak, types of oak. When we get to the shanks and the Bombergers, we can talk about the French oak, the Chinkapin oak, things like that. And
for sure. That's really good insight. ADHD Whiskey, my man Matt, he has a question for Dan. Michter's American with pie or Michter's Celebration with chili? Also, this is super cool, looking to hearing all of his McKees to success. Well done, sir.
Yeah, that was nice. Honestly, I think it goes back to probably a lot of us. What whiskey are you drinking? And it's really based on your mood. So if you're into suggested retail price $6,000 and a bowl of chili, have at it. Or if you're into pie and our our unblended American, why not?
All right, so before we get into, I do want to take kind of a dive here on the Shanks and Bombergers here in a little bit, but I do want to talk about the Michter's Sour Mash. I got a couple questions about this one. So what is it about this bottle that you guys wanted to label it clearly Sour Mash? Is it just about the process? Is it different than some of the other bourbons that you create at Michter's? Why the Sour Mash designation and why its own expression?
Okay, yeah, no, great question. One, just on the top, it's when we called it the original Sour Mash, it was paying homage to the Pennsylvania Michters, their number one selling whiskey in the 1970s and 80s. As this is not the exact or same mash bill, it's actually Willie Pratt, again, our first master distiller's creation.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, and so he came up with the mash bill, but it's a sour mash whiskey because there's no dominant grains. So we use corn, rye, malted barley, all U.S. grade, number one, non-GMO. Okay, so to us, we're just starting out with the highest quality ingredients, okay, for our whiskeys.
Yep.
Now, this isn't the exact recipe as the Pennsylvania Michters, but it was once written by a very well-respected Michael Jackson that the recipe was, I think it was 38% corn, 50% rye, and like 12% malted barley. Well, they didn't go above 50% rye because back then we know, in the especially late 1900s, but 1900s rye was really became a non-existent category, right? So they didn't want to be labeled as such. So we stayed with that same, kind of train of thought of no dominant grains in it. To me, it's a very elegant whiskey. It's at 86 proof, and some will say it's in between a bourbon and a rye because you get a little sweetness on the front, maybe a little spice on the finish. And what was really cool for this one, back in 2019, we were named Whiskey of the Year by Whiskey Exchange, which is the world's largest online retailer, and right there in Scotch's backyard. So, that was huge for us. And we're a small to medium sized distillery, so anything like that, it means a lot. And
where was it? I thought I saw it. Oh, okay, yeah. Somebody said, I don't know if you know about this, but Gus the Fuss says, Dan loved the Michter's placement in the show Billions. was that a cognizant? Was that an actual like product placement that you guys had to put up some money for to do that?
Well, I don't know how it exists now. I know at the beginning it started out organic. The producers were a big fan of Michter's, given the content of the show and the high profile and so forth, and us having the Celebration sour mash whiskey and 25-year bourbons and so forth. So yeah, it was great. And I've through the years I've met several of the cast, and they've been great. And yeah, it's been huge. I mean, we've been very fortunate to see ourselves in music videos and some other other TV shows and things like that. And it's again, it's very rewarding when you see something that we work very hard at being enjoyed by others. And
yeah, I think the key to your success, not you personally, but Michter's in general, obviously you're a big part of that, but the fact that you guys have a good range of options as far as pricing goes, because I think a lot of people tend to look at the higher end bottles that you have, like the Celebration and the 20-year and the 25-year, and all these super, super high end bottles that, most folks don't get to try or buy. But then you look at all these other ones, you have 4 core range bottles, you have 2 10-year products that are generally findable if you try. Yeah, they might be pricey for some, but they're still, 10-year products from Kentucky. You have the Shanks, the Bombergers, which offers you something a little bit different. You do some special releases. You have some barrel strength releases. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, I when I was prepping for this interview, and I'm kind of looking back to all the different expressions that Michter's has had over the years, it's pretty remarkable for such a, I'm not going to say a young distiller, but a pretty young distillery, right?
Yeah. First and foremost, and I hope, that people agree with this or experiencing it, our focus is purely on quality, and being privately held, we do not have to entertain, the shareholders, right? This is, essentially 3 brothers, the family that owns the Michter's, and I'll just say in our processes, we always talk about 6 key production philosophies, and some of them are less efficient. Some of them cost more, but they're willing to do it. And when we have ideas, if we can showcase that it increases the quality of the whiskey, ownership is on board, even if it does cost more. I mean, just going back to the 18-month air dry seasoning, right? And again, I don't want to, make it sound like we're the only one doing certain parts of these, right? But collectively, if you look at, we always talk about our products being single barrel or small batch. There's really no regulation of what small batch is. You could do 1,000-barrel batch be your small batch. We do the equivalent of 20 full barrels, so truly small. So again, we're very quality focused. we're not, what is it, quality over quantity, as some will say. We age to a taste profile, not an age statement. Our US1 is typically between 5 and 7 years. So every week when we're sitting in the taste panel approving new lots, it's if something's not ready, we'll let it go, let it stay. Yeah. Our 10-year products, I know we're going to talk about that, but they're much older than 10 years in a day. In fact, we never say exactly how much they are, but if you go back just a few years, people were enjoying about a 15-year-old whiskey. So, yeah. And honestly, you're not far off that now. It's and those are the things we can do because, and hopefully, and I really feel that Michter's is becoming known for quality, and that's something that we're proud of too.
No, for sure. Yeah, I think that's always important. I think that's something that people don't look at. They just kind of look at they just want what they want, what's in the bottle. But I think the processes behind it is, I think it's getting more and more important each and every year with so many whiskeys coming out. You want whiskeys that are going to how many whiskeys have I had in the last couple of years that have been a lot of fluff, not a lot of flavor? They just want to get a bottle out in the market. Unfortunately, there's a lot of that, today. But there are also, a lot of amazing whiskeys as well. And I would still put Michter's up there.
I do feel to what you said. I feel like overall, I think what are we up to 17 SKUs, but not every one of them's released every year.
Yeah,
we don't want to be a flavor of the month company. Right. And so we try to be very thoughtful in how we release things. And I always say, going back to also, again, what you just said about each one being uniquely different, I don't even feel that we have a bottle that crosses over on another one. I think they're always uniquely different. And even if one's not your favorite, hopefully you can still appreciate the qualities that were in that whiskey, whether it was, the aromatics where they're, we're looking for a whiskey that's very rich, well balanced, of course, nice warm mouthfeel, and ultimately smooth. And that's something that I know separates us from a lot of other whiskeys is that smoothness.
Well, I think one thing that I think has set you apart more than even over the bourbon is your ryes. The rye whiskeys coming out of Michter's, I think, the 10-year rye is delicious. And for most of the years, except this year, I've liked the rye over the 10-year bourbon. But this year, we're going to get into the 10-year expressions, but just your ryes in general.
Well, that's what's in the glass right now.
Yeah.
I could have opened any of these bottles, and this is the one I drink most of is our US1 single barrel Kentucky straight.
Yeah, it's just so sweet. And you know what? I'm actually going to go barrel strength because I love it so much. But your rye whiskeys, I think, have really set you apart. There's something so it just, like, for me, it just strikes a perfect balance between sweet and spice. There's not many ryes that do that. I know people love their 95.5 ryes. I love a really good 95.5 rye too. But man, something about a Michter's profile. The ones that, so since the Michter's your core range, drop the corks. You distill it on your own. Can you reveal the mash bill to this? I know people were asking, or is that under lock and key?
Yeah, it's the percentages are under lock and key. We hold a few things close to our heart. So I'll say if you go back to phase one in the 90s and so forth, Michter's first releases were actually a 10-year Kentucky straight rye and a 10-year Kentucky straight bourbon. And then, again, eventually the single barrel rye came. I'm not sure what your proof is at that. The US1 single barrel is 84.8 proof.
Yeah, 84 proof.
We consider it a Kentucky style rye, and with saying that, we are closer to the 51% rye grain in the mash bill.
Yep.
So that additional corn is exactly what you just said, that nice balance of sweetness and spice. Look, north of the river, they make some very nice high ryes, but much different experience, very bold, very spicy at times. This one, it is very, very well received, especially to people that have had bad experiences with rye.
That's actually a really good point, because folks that obviously, when people come to my house, are like, hey, can I try, one of your 1,000 bourbons you have? I'm like, yeah, sure. Drink whatever the hell you want. But I'm like, have you ever had like a really good rye? Generally, the folks that do not like rye, I will open up that Michter's right there that you just said, your US1 rye whiskey, and they're actually pretty responsive to it. They think it's pretty sweet, pretty light. Yeah, maybe the spice is something they have to get used to, but I think the balance of sweet and spice is something they latch onto pretty quickly. Kenneth Rathburn has a great question. Have you guys considered doing a Pennsylvania style rye, considering the brand's history? Now, Pennsylvania style ryes are usually pretty high in rye content, and not only that, I'm pretty sure it's a distinct type of rye grain that is used. I mean, you tell me, Dan.
Well, I mean, I would just say we will probably continue doing the Kentucky style rye. Pennsylvania rye being unique. I always, I shouldn't even say this because it'll be out there now for people to laugh at. But one of the ryes from is it the Monongahela?
Monongahela.
That rye. But
Monongahela.
we are focused on the Kentucky portion of it. So again, never say never on anything. But right now we're very proud of the ryes we're producing. And
all right, awesome. I love the ryes. I think it's probably one of the more beloved expressions. Your toasted ryes, your the barrel proof rye, and obviously the 10-year rye. The toasted thing I want to get into it with you, because I feel like Michter's toasted rye was kind of the toasted expression before everybody was doing toasted expressions like we see today. I'm not sure if there was something before that. You tell me, in the industry, but I feel like, as far as I've been into whiskey, your toasted rye was probably the first toasted expression I was introduced to. Tell everybody about a little bit of the evolution of that idea and how that worked out.
Yeah, no, and actually we'll date back even earlier. So back in 2014 was when the first time Michter's did a toasted barrel finish, and they did it with bourbon.
Okay.
Well, forgive me on the dates, but like I know we did it in 2014, 15, I think 18 with bourbon, and and I know we've done it, I believe, since. And the rye came along in 2017, but yeah, as we are, as far as we know, we're the first producer to do a toasted barrel finish. It's been very well received for us, and huge compliment as you're seeing others do it now. But it's you can take, let's just say, since we're talking about the rye, what we do is we take that rye that was aged in a new toasted charred American white oak at barrel strength, right? And you can go back to the bourbon, and apply all of this, but it aged in the new toasted charred American white oak. It was fully matured, and then we removed it and entered it into a new toasted uncharred American white oak barrel. And again, it's amazing just in the toasting process how you can achieve flavor extraction and so many different characteristics that can be extracted. So, and it's not a long time, as we don't disclose it because obviously we don't want to give our trade secrets out, right? But it's really not a long time, and it's amazing how you can see the whiskey just change. 2 days later, you can tell it's a little different, and you can sometimes see how we went from a sweeter profile and a little darker and more chocolates and things like that. And it's really a neat process and a cool process to go through, tasting along the way, but it definitely makes a beautiful whiskey. Now, we've done it in the bourbon, and we leave that one at 91.4 proof. The rye is left at barrel strength. And then we also, in 19 and then in 2022, we did the toasted barrel finish original sour mash, which I think I see you have.
Yeah, the toasted sour mash. Yeah, the toasted sour mash I poured was the toasted variant. Yep.
And all three of those whiskeys are different, so you're going to use different toast profiles and to complement that whiskey. In fact, we changed it up a little bit, even from 19 to 22 when we did the second release of the original sour mash, because we wanted to enhance certain characteristics. And I think we achieved that. We didn't just rest on what we did one time. We are a company that will try to, if we think we can improve something, we're going to work towards that.
You're definitely right on all three being different. I feel like the Michters, the toasted rye, you get a little bit more of that, like a bigger punch of sweetness, maybe a little bit more of like a vanilla cream, marshmallow type note. I feel like in the sour mash though, it comes across a little bit more of a smokiness to it, which I really like. And then the toasted bourbon, I just think it's just all the sweetness just gets elevated, to the
There's so much brown sugar. You actually do get that toasted campfire notes, marshmallow. Yeah. The rye to me has a real nice like salty caramel, and the wood staves we used for the toasted barrel finished rye actually were air dried seasoned for 24 months. So again, just changing different elements of the barrel and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into a couple of my favorite expressions that you guys have made this year, which is one above all, which is the Shanks and Bombergers, because I want to get into a little bit of the history of these two bottles. These bottles kind of sneakily come out each and every year because everyone's kind of hyper focused on the Michter's 10 years and some of those other expressions, and maybe the barrel strength if you're releasing one this year, the toasted ones. But then you have these interesting releases that come out each and every year, Bombergers and Shanks, which normally experiment with some different oak profiles, some different maturation techniques. Tell us a little bit about the 2023 releases here. We talked about this a little bit earlier. You're a Bombergers guy, and I totally agree with you. But this year, it's all about the Shanks for me. And then on top of that, hashtag Shank Burger. Yes, I told Dan McKee about the Shank Burger, blending the two and how delicious it is. But tell us a little bit about the lineage of both Shanks and Bombergers.
Well, by the way, I did share that with Andrea, and we got a nice kick out of that. And, you don't know this, but we've already trademarked it. So no.
Damn it! I missed my chance.
Yeah. No, first of all, the Shanks and Bombergers pay homage to that early Pennsylvania history. All right. Mm-hmm. And we also look at these two as our legacy series, right? Again, that paying homage, but also it's outside that Michter's house style. And if you go back to 2018, we started putting the vintage on the label. And each year it's a little different. Like you said, we haven't settled in on an exact recipe. It allows us to do some innovation. And, and again, our goal is to bring, the best American whiskey. They're very limited releases. And just in regards to that, as we continue to grow, we're trying to take all the steps. I'm going to, step aside for just a quick second, but just kind of give you an idea of where we're at as a company. As we've gone through those three phases, each year you always add more to the production, always add more, right? And we know it's frustrating, especially on a lot of these limited releases. You just didn't, as you're a growing company, you just didn't make enough of it because you think you're making, oh, wow, was that too much, So you have to make those decisions. But each year we increase. Since we've been distilling here in Shively, we started up on 4 fermenters and expanded. And then, we're at max capacity now. By November of last year, we went to 24/7. In fact, the turn of 2022, we went 24/5. Now the distillery is at 24/7. So nice. We're working on these things, but we've never abandoned that commitment to quality. And that's why I love how we've stepped up and we didn't just hit the gas pedal and kind of abandon everything. It's always been, step up.
Yeah. I mean, it's a smart way to do it. I mean, one thing, I read every press release you guys put out. It's interesting to see how it goes from, stuff is limited, stuff we can't release this year. I'd rather you do that than not force it out. Yeah, is it disappointing sometimes? I'm not going to get my toasted barrel this or 10-year rye, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have you I'd rather have you not release it if it's not ready. So
and that's how we feel. But you know, and so with the Shanks, you know, this one is we call it a sour mash whiskey. It's at what is it, 91.2 proof. There's a fair amount of rye in this whiskey, and in fact, the whiskey being used for this in the mash bill, we use some malted rye. That's something new for this year.
I was just gonna say, when I did the review of it, I had read you had some malted rye in there, give it a little bit extra. So maybe explain to everyone, what does, just overall, as far as this rye in general, what does malted rye do to a whiskey versus a standard rye grain?
Sure. Well, it can definitely increase still some of the spice and so forth. And, you know, whether it contributes to some chocolate notes and so forth, it's just a nice little adder to, you know, complement the corn, the rye we're already using, and then the malted barley. You know, we know corn's going to give you that big sweetness, right? And the rye, a lot of people will say, whether it's the citrus, the floral, that spice, that peppery spice, and so forth. So this having a fair amount of rye in it, but the whiskey being aged in again, I always go back to our traditional standard new toasted charred American white oak, but then some of it was aged in a French oak. This French oak actually came from the Vosges region of France, which has a nice minerality. It's, you know, the oak that grows there, nice tight grains and so forth. Again, providing a lot of flavor extraction to the whiskey. So yeah, to me, this is a very nice whiskey, and that's where you and I were talking earlier. I enjoy the Bombergers if you're making me pick, but to me, this is a very nice whiskey.
Yeah, generally I'm a Bombergers guy, but this year's Shanks is really good. If I have one request, this is just a personal request for me, because you switch up the Shanks each and every year. I'm not sure if there's legalities towards this, but I would love it if you guys put the fact that you're using malted rye and a French oak cask somewhere on the label. I think, because I don't think people realize how different each of the Shanks is and the work you guys are putting into it. I feel like putting it on the label, just being a little bit more transparent as far as like what's going on in that bottle and the differences between all the different Shanks that you've put out over the years, I think would be pretty extraordinary. I'm just a request, just saying, if you could, that'd be great. I feel like every bourbon geek watching right now would appreciate knowing that this year's Shanks comes in a French oak cask and also has some malted rye, entry proof, all that. I don't know. Those are some of the fun things that I think bourbon geeks love to find on a label. Yeah.
Well, I will say it's just knowing that each year, though, going back to 2018 is going to be different. Like, you know, we've used French oak and Chinquapin oak in the Shanks before in past years. It would be cool to do a vertical, you know, with both of them. Look, I don't know this to be the truth, but I got a feeling that would be a labeling nightmare. But you know what? I wrote it down, so I'm definitely going to inquire about it. And next time I see you, but I might actually have an answer. But
all right, let's dive into Bombergers here.
Okay.
Now, generally, like as we said, Bombergers has generally been our favorite between the two, maybe because of the higher proof. Is because you guys go in. We didn't talk about this yet, but you guys go in at a pretty low entry proof, maybe the lowest that I've heard about in the industry, going in at what, 104, 103?
Actually 103. It's
103. Yeah,
it's the lowest barrel entry proof of any distillery of scale, and again, going back to those quality standards, this is for all of our products. So this is, and actually I would say, again, this is probably the most important thing that we do. If anyone's going to remember something, this is it. And like, you know, again, there's a lot of great whiskeys out there, you know, quality focused also, but what are some of the things that separates Michter's from others? And this is definitely one of those. So as we distill to a much higher proof, we're going to, you know, at barrel entry time, we're going to reduce it down just using water.
Yep.
So industry standard and U.S. regulation, it's 125 proof for maximum barrel entry, right? we actually bring it all the way down to 103. So we're adding more water up front. This helps dissolve the sugars more readily, but also phenolic compounds, those phenols that create burn in a whiskey. As you know, over time, the reaction and so forth, it'll help create a very smooth whiskey. So that's one of the biggest benefits of doing that. Now, you can go back in history in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were actually entering into the barrels around 102 to 105, right? And we know through time and one of the reasons to save money was to increase the proof, because the higher the proof, the less water you add. So by us adding that much water to go to 103 proof, we're having to use more barrels and build more warehouses, which is, you know, a huge cost to the business, right?
I know that's what I was just gonna say. I feel like, you know, not many people know this. They feel like low entry proof, okay, they're going in at a lower proof, but people don't realize the cost in that, because you're watering it down before you go in the barrel. It's a lot more barrels you got to do. Then you got to worry about storage. Then you got to worry about the amount of whiskey that's going to be. You're gonna, you know, you got everything that follows low entry proof. I feel like you get more flavorful, better, sweeter whiskey, but at the same time, it's more costly. And for you guys that are still, like we said, you're still kind of small, you're scaling up, you're ramping up production. Other folks like Peerless, Wilderness Trail, all going in the barrel at a low entry proof and being relatively new. I mean, that takes balls, man. It's costly.
It does. And, you know, and like everything, and we all know this in the world, everything continues to, you know, the costs increase and so forth. But, you know, building a warehouse and the way we build warehouses is extremely, because we can talk about it in a little bit, but we do a heat cycling. But going back to that 103, if you think about this, though, after aging, let's just say 5 to 7 years, but we're going to come out of the barrel somewhere around 110, 112. You'll see the 108 or the 114, you know.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Baumburgers is pretty close to barrel proof.
Yeah, well, and without saying it's barrel proof, but yeah, it's up there. But if you think of us coming out, let's say 110, 112, somebody that went into the barrel at say 125 may come out of the barrel at 135 or a little more. They're going to add 50% more water at bottling time, right? Just water that had no influence of the maturing side of it. So that's why we feel our whiskeys are very rich. You know, there's a lot of interaction during that time, and then we're not just adding water at the end to finish it off the bottling proof. So, but again, you know, it is expensive. And again, I don't want to just dwell on cost, because we all have cost in everything we do.
Well, but it definitely makes a factor as far as like the amount of barrels you got to source. And, you know, as you know, barrels are getting harder and harder to source. Just there's barrel shortages. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So, yep.
For sure. So the Baumburgers then, as it's a Kentucky straight bourbon at 108 proof. This is definitely a bigger whiskey in my mind. Very, very rich. And same thing, we did use a little bit of malted rye in the mash bill, and the same thing. Some of the bourbon aged in new toasted charred American white oak, and then some of it in a chinquapin oak. And that chinquapin oak, the wood staves were air dried for 3 years. It's a subspecies of, you know, white oak, and it doesn't grow as tall in nature. It's a little shorter, right? A little curvier at the base, more branches. It's actually harder to log, but it really adds a nice fruity, spicy chocolate notes to the whiskey. So then when you bring these together, and we've done different variations of this during the year, last few years. So if you did a vertical, you are going to see different whiskeys, but still maintaining. We always look at things. Is it in the family? Is it, you know, and things like that. But if you go with do the vertical, which has been a long time for me, but it's really cool to see the differences.
Yeah, for sure. I think the chinquapin oak, once I read about it, was an interesting kind of find, because I was getting ready to do the reviews. I'm like, oh man, this has chinquapin oak in it. I'm like, you would never know. That's why I was like, oh man, like I wish they would just kind of throw that on the label. However, I'm going to have to do like a Bomberger's flight or even a Shanks flight, like from the last few years, and really kind of find the differences. But the Shanks to me and the Bombergers both, I feel like you nailed it on the head. There's more of a chocolatey type of vibe to it. I think the malted rye provides a little bit of a spice kick to both. And I think that's why I love them so much. And that's right. I made a Shank burger right in front of you, Dan McKee. I'm drinking it right now.
Yeah, again, this is just a comment. One of the focuses, I think it's great, and I do understand why you would want a little more. It's not that we're not trying to be transparent or hide something, because if you ever see the sell sheet for it, it would say it, right?
Oh, but for sure. That's where I got my info. I mean, all the info is on your website, which is great.
But a lot of people may, to your point, not see this, right? But also the one thing we do want to focus is, again, on that quality. But I do understand why you're saying that, and
just because all of them are so different, and I think I think people should know that. I have a great question here from Travis Robeson. Since the barrel entry is lower and the water in it melds as the whiskey matures, does this also have the effect of having less angel share, and you get a greater percentage from each barrel? That's a great question.
So actually, during the angel share, the water actually evaporates. It's smaller than the alcohol molecule, right? So we still lose a lot of angel share. And one of the things that increases this for us is that we do heat cycling. So we all know one of the reasons Kentucky is one of the best places to make and age whiskey, though, is our climate, our changing of the seasons, right? This is a great area for that. And so when the whiskey heats up, pressure inside increases, it drives that whiskey into the capillaries of the wood. And then, of course, when it naturally cools down, it's extracting those flavors. We call that a cycle. That could occur anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 6 times during the year. But in the wintertime, when temperature's kind of at a lull, not a lot of movement, we actually close the windows. We heat cycle the warehouse. So we'll heat it up. We have temperature probes with data loggers all throughout the warehouse. Once we experience a certain temperature change, we'll shut the heat off, let it naturally cool down, and we've created a cycle. So during that, as we do that several times during the winter, and the benefits, we feel it adds about 6 months of maturity for each year that we do it. You got to think about, and everyone's number is going to be a little different, but if you look at just entering distillate into the barrel, you lose about 6% soakage into the wood, right?
Yeah.
A lot of traditional non-heated warehouses are going to lose somewhere around 2.5%, maybe a little more. We're going to lose 4% or even more. And so with the additional heat cycling, we definitely lose our fair share, which, again, the more evaporation, the less we have at the end of the day. So no, the water definitely evaporates. And, we do build our warehouses smaller. So we try to tighten that, variance from floor to floor. So that is something that we believe in. So we're not building those huge ones that you'll see.
So you're not getting such huge, swaths of.
Right. There's not such a huge swing from here to here. We've definitely brought that in.
So heat cycling has always been an interesting, an interesting factor with when you talk about aging whiskey. Are all your whiskeys that you guys do, even the source ones, is all of it heat cycled?
Yeah, we do this in all our warehouses.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good to know.
Now, there is protocols in place, because you can't just heat cycle for the life of the whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing we've done well here is taking some of those phase one whiskeys, those 20 to 25 year whiskeys, and they're not, one of their biggest qualities is they're not overly oaked. And they're such beautiful whiskeys that somebody else distilled, but we've had them and we've been, maturing them through the years. But yeah, definitely, you'd have syrup at the end if you heat cycled for its whole life, right? So there are things we have to do. Definitely, if you say what's a goal to me personally is that 20 years into this, that we here in Shively I hope our 20 is being as well received as the 20 current, because that is amazing whiskey. And again, we've had to babysit those barrels under Willie and Pam's watchful eye, and Andrea's watchful eye. So
yeah, I'll say this: Michter's has a way of aging super high aged bourbons better than most,
and it's difficult.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing. I think people don't realize it. Let's get into some of the higher age whiskeys here, because we got to talk about the Michter's 10-year this year, the 10-year bourbon, and the Michter's 10-year rye. The Michter's 10-year bourbon this year is ridiculous. Now, I'm going to tell you straight out, Dan, because I'm an honest guy. I'm very transparent. Michter's 10-year, to me, most years, has been more of a how do I say this delicately? It's a high price bourbon for a low proof. And, but that's me being a whiskey geek and liking higher proof stuff. However, this year, the flavors in the Michter's 10-year were so incredibly dense and rich, and the finish on it went for days. I'm like, this is the Michter's 10-year bourbon I've been waiting for my whole life. Sure. Like, it is just rich and dense and delicious. Everybody that's tried it, when I first released the review, people did not believe me at first. So there's no way it's as good as you're saying it is. And now that people have been tasting it, people are realizing, yes, it's as good as you said it is. So Michter's 10-year skipped last year because you said, or at least the press release said, that it wasn't quite ready or there yet. We wanted to skip a year. We feel like it can, you and Andre are working together. You said, okay, this could be something really special. Give it one more year. And I totally agree with you. Tell us a little bit more about Michter's 10-year, the process. Obviously, you can't tell us, where you're getting it from, but obviously you're aging it in a way under a very watchful eye, as you said, to get all these flavors. So tell us a little bit about the process of Michter's 10-year.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, it falls under that we age to a taste profile, not an age statement. And I also hope kind of just tonight going through the things that we do as a distillery kind of helps explain why. I know you said it's an expensive, kind of lower proof whiskey, but hopefully some of this, what we're talking about tonight, kind of helps explain, our product line, us wanting to be our goal is to be a premium whiskey, of course, and so forth. But in those 10 years, even in past years, I would, even at the 94.4 proof, I would still say they were still very rich and flavorful and so forth. But now just in regards to the 23 release, yeah, I mean, this whiskey was ready to go last year. Andrea and I were going through the stocks and that were going to be used. And we felt that through tasting and so forth, because there's a lot that goes into this. We do a custom chilled filtration at the end of all of this, right? And we can talk further into that. But, finding every whiskey is a little different. And, whether it was a 13-year-old whiskey, a 15-year-old whiskey, there's been earlier years where it was, let's say, 18 years, right? But last year, we just felt certain markers we wanted to increase. One, the aromatic on it. When you pop the cork, and then poured it in your cup, right? I guarantee those from this, and I can say it, I guarantee those aromatics just came at you, right?
It's hard, when you think of a bourbon. For me personally, everybody has their perfect bourbon in mind, what they think it is, what it tastes like, what it smells like. To me, this is my perfect bourbon. The aromatics are unbelievably balanced. The flavors are rich. The texture is rich. The flavors borderline on candy, spice, butterscotch, which is my favorite note in whiskey to find. That's probably why I love it so much. Plus, you have the oak presence that's in it, the age. And it's not overly oaked by any means. It really is. It's an absolute masterclass in bourbon maturation. I want to know kind of, you just kind of alluded to it last year. You said there were some other things you wanted to extract from it. How in the world do you control that, like in throughout like a whole nother year? Like, what are you trying to? So you're obviously tasting through the whiskeys. You're going through some sensory. You're going through your taste profiles. You're going through your processes. In what way, shape, or form are you, like? How do you even guess? Like, figure out? Okay, we need to bring this a little bit more out. I feel like it'll be good with a little bit more oak. How does that even work? Like, how does that happen, man?
Well, I mean, the good thing is we've been making whiskey for a long, long time. So, there's a lot of data, a lot of characteristics. We know our whiskeys. We've been very fortunate to be we've been given, along with organoleptic and, sensory panels and so forth. We have a lot of equipment, our GC mass spec, things like that, where we can measure concentrations of different compounds we feel are very important to the whiskeys. And so as we go into the warehouses several times a year, collect, samples from different lots and so forth, we're getting real-time data of how it's aging. So you're actually watching certain compounds elevate, or however they're interacting with the barrel. So one of the things, the mouthfeel, I greatly appreciate the compliment of the whiskey, but the mouthfeel is also there.
Oh, absolutely. The texture of it is, for a low proof whiskey, the texture is incredible.
Thank you. And that was one of the things. And if you go back just a year, when I said it was ready, when we presented it to ownership, I still remember watching Joe, again, our president, Joe Malioco, and going, but this whiskey's good. And we were like, well, we agree, but we feel we can do this. And this kind of goes back to, I really feel that people are associating quality with Michters because two things. One, we've done this before. Willie Pratt held the release back to the following year to receive a lot of, great reviews and so forth. Well, we know the whiskey wasn't bad last year because a barrel in 1 year does not turn something, right? Yeah. So it had to still be good and ready last year. But again, more aging, a little more oak presence. To me, I get nice toffee chocolate notes.
For sure. Yeah, again, a lot of toffee.
Just another year in the barrel with more extractives. And again, we're very fortunate we have a great team here. I had the opportunity to start out as a distillery operator, and at Beam, working with people with 10 to 40 years experience. Where do you find that? Coming over to Michter's, working with Willie, had well over 40 years experience. Pam Howman, well over 20, is running the largest distillery. And then, Andrea, she's master chemical engineer.
Yep.
And then we have 3 chemists on staff. We have several chemical engineers, mechanical engineer. Matt Bell is our distiller and vice president of production. His experience is at another large distillery running pot stills, has a great knowledge of microbiology and stuff like that. So we have a great team. I mean, and so when you put it all together, that's how you can create beautiful whiskeys like this.
So this is one question I have to have answered. If you can, please. How old actually is the Michter's 10? When I tasted it and reviewed it, I said this thing has got to be between 15 and 18 years old because the oak and the deliciousness. And I know last year was already well above 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing this is 15 or 16 years old. Am I in the ballpark?
So look, I love my job. You're not on the high end's too high, but I'll just say you're in the ballpark. And
okay.
If you look at in the glass, I apologize. There's certain things we just don't disclose. So bear with me there. But I will just say it's many years past 10.
Okay.
As you can see how it coats your glass, the color, the oak profile, as you said, it's not overly done. It's really the nice balance of it. I wish I could.
I'm trying here, guys. I'm sorry.
I know you are. I will say I have the best job I ever have had. And
I don't want you to lose your job. If you keep making this American whiskey, you don't say shit. I get it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I'm in the ballpark, maybe 14, 15. It sounds like ish.
Again, I did not confirm that, but
yeah, that was neither confirmed nor denied by Dan McKee. I'm just saying. Okay. All right. Let's get into a little bit of the Michter's rye, Michter's 10-year rye, which will probably be my other pour of the night here. This rye, I know a lot of people love the barrel strength rye, and obviously it's a younger product. The Michter's 10-year rye, again, you always say, Michter's always says that these are generally a little bit more than 10 years, usually when you get it in the bottle. What makes the 10-year rye such a flavor bomb? Is it low entry proof? What is it about the 10-year rye, what you're looking for, to deem it, okay, we can bottle it? What is it about the 10-year rye and the attributes you're looking for?
Our 10-year rye, I wish I had an endless supply. In fact, I'm sitting here looking at your collection of Michters and actually have a little bit of jealousy because I think your collection is better than mine at home. So
you're the one with the celebration behind you.
Yeah, but I'm still at work though. And I don't have the bottle at home either of celebration. To steal from what somebody had once said before, does the Ferrari worker get to take the Ferrari home? Well, no. And for the 2022 release, there was only 328 of them. So I'm just honored to go through the whole year-long process. So I've drank a lot of it. But, the 10-year rye, it focuses on that Kentucky style. Going back to just the mash bill, the quality of the grains, the yeast that we're using, really just provides a very rich, approachable rye whiskey that, in my book, has nice citrus, floral component, honey.
Honey is a little
bit of toffee.
Honey is a spot-on call. I get this really beautiful dark honey note on this every time I try it. It's so good.
I can tell you this, and I can say this with our rye, but when I let somebody that is a serious whiskey drinker that says they do not like rye and they try the 10-year rye, they can't. I'm like, wow, that is amazing.
I'm guessing they have nothing to say after that.
Wow. Well, it's usually wow. I did not know a rye whiskey could taste like that. And again, this isn't shade at anybody. It's just what we're doing. Just a few weekends ago, I had a family member that really loves Scotch, and he said he had an opportunity to try it, and he was like, "I'm a fan. How do I find more?"
Exactly.
And I have to laugh, but it is and remember, one of the things I want to point out again, from phase 2 to phase 3, we're doing those same things, same mash bills, same, yeast and so forth as we've carried on. So it's only exciting as we continue to grow in the future.
Exceptional stuff. To kind of go back to what I said earlier, I do think Michter's, I think price-wise might be pricey for some people, but it is positioned as a premium product, a premium whiskey. So that's why. On top of that, you do still have a ultra big range of prices, from their core expressions all the way up to their 10-year, and obviously beyond that, the 2025 celebration, anything beyond that. But I feel like you get such a good array of stuff from Michter's. There's a little something for everyone to try. Dan, this is a great question from Kenneth. We're going to start getting into some of the questions from the chat here. Guys, if you have a question, I'm not seeing it, throw it in a super chat, and I will get it to Dan here. We're going to start throwing in some questions here from the audience. But this one I love here from from Kenneth Rathburn. What's the most important lesson you learned from working at the Booker No Distillery?
Wow.
Great. I know it's a loaded question, isn't it?
It's first of all, I will just say, and hopefully this will be the answer. Working at the Claremont and then the Booker No, and the Booker No being the larger of the two distilleries. My whole time there, I spent on third shift. It's really the experience that both distilleries gave me, because again, I mentioned that I worked with a lot of great people with different backgrounds, different experiences. So I learned a lot, and it's big distillery. There's a lot going on, and so the experiences you learn, and you're managing the distillery. During the night, it's just you, the operators in each department, and one maintenance person, right? So it's a skeleton crew, and you have granary early AM, the distillery running nonstop, the dry house which handles all the byproduct, the thick stillage from the distillery, and the boiler, and it's a big production. And to my experience of being exposed to each one of those departments is what allowed me to come to Michter's. And as I started as distillery manager, but it really paved the way for me to continue to grow here at Michter's. And without that 9 years, I wouldn't be where I'm at here. So that's what I learned at those distilleries, because it's big, it's nonstop. You have to have everything, everything's moving. And then, I always tell our new hires, because we always talk about quality. Never forget, safety is number one. And you learn that when you're running those, when it's below freezing and you're outside and things are starting to freeze up, and, you have to be safe and making sure the team is safe. So it's really the whole experience from starting, my experience from the grains all the way through the operation, and then coming to Michter's, and then again working with different individuals and seeing it all the way into the barrel, and then the maturing side of it has really advanced a lot.
I think that's an amazing call out, because not many people realize, distilling can be dangerous. I mean, you're working with high temperatures, a lot of equipment, steam, a lot of stuff. Safety, I think, is a big part of it.
The industry has done very well. They work well together. The industry has done very well to keep it as safe as possible, for sure. And that's the great part about the community is the focus to safety. Obviously, we're for the last hour been talking about quality, but so hopefully that answered that question. But it was really, and honestly, a little bit of nostalgia, kind of being at those two distilleries and the history, and you had Booker No there, and the Beam family, and it's really cool.
All right, guys. So if you have a question for Dan, start throwing them in the chat. I will try to pepper him with as many questions as I can before he's got to take off here. Want to maybe keep him on here I don't want to sit here all night, but we'll give him another maybe 10, 15 minutes here so he can answer some questions. So Fancy Franchi, also known as Maureen Franchi, and her husband Gary Franchi, who thinks is the best Michter's tour guide? Is it Rory Franchi, who now works at Michter's?
Well, I will say Rory is awesome. I will say the whole Fort Nelson team is awesome. I will tell you what, we have, and I didn't really touch on this. This will be my one sales pitch for the night. Okay.
All right, here comes, guys. Get your notes down. Here comes the Dan McKee elevator pitch.
Yeah. So you have it won't be as quick as an elevator, but the Fort Nelson Distillery is our visitor experience, right? And we have a really cool craft distillery there. We have a world-class cocktail bar. The building itself is in downtown Louisville, across from the Louisville Slugger Museum. It's a very old building, built around 1890, housed many different businesses through the years, but by the late 1900s, the building became in real disrepair. Michter's purchased it in, I think it was 2011, and then started on a long journey to bring it back to life. And they decided to keep the 4 walls and remove the interior structure. So they had to pin it with a steel system. And they came back with over 400,000 pounds of steel and concrete. And what's really cool is they reused a lot of the floor joists, the wood for the flooring, the cabinets, the windows, things like that. They tried to preserve what they could. But it really turned it into, again, a nice experience. We have the pot still system with 3 cypress wood fermenters that came from the Pennsylvania Michters, handcrafted by Vendome, which is a local company here in Louisville, known worldwide, though, for their quality and craftsmanship. So we have that historic pot still system in operation. And then, of course, some really cool experiences along the tour. But then the bar at Fort Nelson on the 2nd floor, they really concentrate on beautiful cocktails. David Wondridge, cocktail historian, curated the classic side, and then our local talented bar team has created the seasonal, and so has done a great job. But kind of going back to Rory and her coworkers down there at Fort Nelson, it's really cool the job they've done. They're very educated, and every time I go down there, and once a month we do a legacy tour where like somebody from senior management, like Andrea or myself, does a 2-hour tour, and I'll get paired with one of the distillery associates, and just listening to them, I'm like, it's amazing. And I'm like, it truly is the experience they give. And something that I'm very proud of the whole team down there. We don't just hand them a script. So after they hire in and get settled in, we actually bring them to Shively. Our teammates will come to Shively and work in each department. Now, they might not do every physical aspect or something, but they are going through the process. They are helping out. They are turning valves here and there and so forth. So they are getting a hands-on experience. And to me, it just elevates. And again, their knowledge, I laugh. The tour will be over, and I'm like, where did that come from? But yes, Rory's great. They're all great.
Rory's amazing. I've met her a few times, and actually, the last time I was at Distillery, in Louisville, she was there, and she got us into the pour your own, fill your own bottle program, and it was awesome. But so Maureen and Gary, if you're watching, Rory, best ever. Just saying.
Best ever.
Best ever. Okay.
Along with everybody else at Fort Nelson.
Yeah, along with everyone else. The bar upstairs at Fort Nelson is ridiculous. The cocktails. If you guys want one of the best cocktails in Louisville, go to the Michter's bar. The cocktails on the menu are incredible. Just saying that. Just putting that out there.
No, I appreciate it. They do work hard.
Yeah. All right. A few rapid fire questions for you here. Whiskey Nose. Are the grains that Michter's uses local to the area?
So, as I mentioned, the U.S. grade #1 and non-GMO corn's typically going to be the Kentucky, Indiana area.
Okay.
Our rye, a lot of it's going to come out of that Minnesota, Wisconsin, up in those states.
You're not having to go to Germany yet for your rye?
No, it's U.S. And then
okay, good, cool.
There's still a fair amount of rye grown here in the U.S. to support the distilleries, but
awesome.
In that area, they're known for growing, very high-end rye. So, and then malted barley, you'll start reaching up into the the Dakotas and so forth like that. So,
cool.
No, it's. I will tell you, we have our Springfield property. We have 205 acres in Springfield, Kentucky. We're building some warehouses there, but we're also working with a local farmer to grow some estate grown grains, corn, rye, barley. We've done some other grains for innovation. And a lot of those grains are used at the Fort Nelson Distillery because as that's a smaller pot still system, we'll try different yeasts, different mash bills, different grains, and so forth.
So a little bit more of an experimental.
Yeah, and as it's pot still whiskey, which thankfully is aging very well.
Mm-hmm.
it's a different style than our column still. So in Shively, our distillation system's 100% copper, over 11,000 pounds of copper in the system, 32-inch diameter continuous column still to a doubler pot still. And, and we use some of the grains off the farm here. But one thing that's been really good for my career, but also very frustrating, is really learning the farming aspect of this. So as we purchased the farmland in, I think it was around 2018, and we started growing grains. And, if the grains don't meet our high quality standards, right, we've rejected quite several crops through the years. Yeah. And that's a painful phone call that I have to make to ownership. But on the flip side, we're still maintaining those quality standards. And when we have successes, it is difficult growing rye and barley here in Kentucky. Some people know how to do it, and we're learning how to do it, but it's difficult.
One thing you mentioned earlier that we didn't really take a deep dive on. We don't have to take a deep dive on it, but if you could touch on your chill filtration. You said you do a custom chill filtration on your products. Tell us a little bit about that and why you had to make it custom.
So, the art of filtration, some people, people have differing opinions of a non-chilled filtered whiskey or a custom chilled filtration that we do. Scotch, for example, they're using that first used barrel, right? Or a used barrel, and they could use it multiple times. Beautiful whiskey, just different approach. We're using a barrel for let's say bourbon and rye for the very first time. So and then we're toasting before we char. So the extraction level is through the roof. So Willie Pratt did 32 iterations of each whiskey to determine the best filtration protocol for each whiskey to best represent it, right? Mm-hmm. And the goal essentially is to create a whiskey that, again, is very well balanced. One of the reasons we chill filter, of course, is, again, I know I'm borrowing lines from other people, but it says it best when you say, looks good on the shelf, stable in your glass, right? So as you chill a whiskey down, it brings a lot of those fatty acids, lipids, and so forth together and can create a chill haze or flocking in the whiskey. So we do want to remove a certain amount of that to keep that from happening. But then the filtration part of it is we use different filtering media for each whiskey, as each whiskey is unique to itself, whether in age or type of spirit or not. So with all that flavor extraction from that new toasted charred barrel, you have a lot of large chain compounds, small chain, and we want to allow some of those smaller ones to really shine through. So we'll pull a little bit of this and a little of that to create that. And in doing so, we use a filter press, but the media can be different, or how many pads it goes through. It's all different. You adjust the temperature, the pressure, the time of recirculation, and the type of media. You can create a completely different whiskey. Willie was able to leave very rich, dark color and strip all the color out. Color solids, that's flavor, right? So it was very interesting, but that's why we believe in it. We don't do a carbon filtration. Some will do a carbon filtration, kind of like a one size fits all, sometimes centered on volume. We don't do that either. So it kind of goes back to that less efficient part of our process.
Wow, that's super interesting. I had no idea that there were custom variations of the types of way you can do chill filtration. So thank you for kind of illuminating all of us on that. Okay. This is a question that it might seem weird, but this is a thing on my channel. I've asked every distiller, master distiller, blender this question: how do you like your peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Well,
and you gotta no, these are the rules. These are the rules. Okay, Dan, here we go. You gotta give me the type of bread, toasted, untoasted. You gotta give me the type of peanut butter, whether it be crunchy, not crunchy, the type of jelly, preserves, not jelly, and go through the whole thing. Or if you just want to say, you know what, I don't like peanut butter and jelly, that's okay too.
I think it's wrong if you don't like peanut butter.
All right, Dan, lay it out for us.
Yeah,
What's your peanut butter and jelly style?
Yeah, I think it's okay if you're allergic to peanuts, but we can grant that. But yeah, great question. The as a kid that grew up with mom, dad working night shift, and mom, by the time I came around, she was worked and went to school a lot. So yes, peanut butter and jelly was a staple, something that I figured out how to do. But white bread, non-toasted. I do like to butter it before you put the jelly on it.
Okay, so butter the bread.
If we're talking favorite, it's definitely grape jelly.
Okay, grape jelly.
And you know, and I think everybody keeps their jelly in the refrigerator, so cold jelly.
Cold jelly.
I don't know what everyone does, but and then definitely prefer crunchy peanut butter.
Yes.
And as it's still good, but it cannot be organic.
So you want the old school. You want Skippy, crunchy, Jif crunchy.
I want the stuff that's going to put you in the grave sooner. There's some things worth knocking a few years off, and crunchy peanut butter is definitely that one. So
that's the best line of the night right there. I'm going to put that on the T-shirt.
And one last part though, it's got to be cut in half, not diagonal.
Man, okay, that was worth the question. Thank you so much for that, Dan. Okay, everyone's asking it. Private barrels, Michters. Anybody? We're going to see this as a guy that picks about 50 to 80 barrels a year. I would love to do a Michter's private barrel. Are we on the cusp of that anytime soon? What are we thinking?
I think in this question we should focus on the last two words of that question. Great show, but the. No,
sorry. You got to eliminate great show and go to the first four words.
Okay, sorry, my screen was blurry. Look, again, barrel programs are great. It's just never say never, but I don't see it in the it's not in the near future at Michter's. It's not something that we're planning for. We really like how we are doing it. Yeah, so really no, but
I honestly think that because you guys have been pretty public with some of the supply issues you guys have going through. It's like, how are you going to offer private barrels when you're going through some of these supply issues, So
the other part is when you're still when allocation is still real to your brand, it's hard to say you're just gonna. I mean, look, we could do it, and like anything, I'm sure we make it profitable. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like when we do the toasted barrel finish products, right, or whiskeys.
Yeah.
You take away. So when we do a bourbon, you're allotted this much bourbon for the year. When you do a toasted barrel finish bourbon, you have just taken a part of that away now. But yet we still have to balance and make sure the people at home, the stores, the restaurants still have plenty of supply of the bourbon, right? Because we don't want somebody to be upset that they ran out of it. So it's a balancing act, and allocation is still a real, a good and bad, but real issue for us.
Let's go to Brian Tracy from Sagamore is in the house. He said he has met you. He's had the pleasure of meeting you. He said, "How do you remain so level-headed and cool? The quality of your product controls the brand. You're killing it. What's your secret?"
Secret. A lot of people say I'm a humble person. Thank you very much, by the way, and great hearing from you. I don't know. Look, when it comes to sports, when I was younger, I like trash talking and being cocky and all of that, right? But I know through life that, just focus on what you're doing and try to do it the best, because if I focus on other things and then all of a sudden something bad happens, I got to live with that too. So it's just not worth it. It's just who I am. It's authentic. I don't try to be a personality that I'm not. I truly, truly, truly love distilling, being in this industry. And, I went from college to construction to this industry, and I appreciate every day that I come to work, because I remember what prior to the industry was like, and it was tough, and it makes me appreciate what I do here. And again, we're making a product that hopefully brings people together for enjoyment, laughs, celebrations, but I appreciate it. But it's just who I am.
Dude, man, that deserves like the slow clap. I'm gonna give you the Rudy champion, because here we go. You are the champion.
That is fantastic, because when you just said I was from Indiana, I actually lived 15 minutes from the stadium. I think I was in high school when they did that, because some of my classmates were in the stands for the filming of that. So
yeah. Any chance of using a unique barrel like Chinkopin oak in a Bombergers?
Yeah, that's what's in the Bombergers right now.
Yeah, that's in the Bombergers now. The Shanks is the French oak. The Bombergers is the Chinkopin.
But we've used Chinkopin in the Shanks in earlier years.
Gary Francis said, I agree. The entire Fort Nelson crew is amazing in every aspect of the customer experience. Totally agree.
I really am not saying that just because I have to go down there and work with them, but the experience. I have friends. I have people that come from out of town, and it's always about if it wasn't for the team down there, it wouldn't be the experience that it is.
Any plans for? I mean, you guys are pretty close to the vest. Any plans of a wheated whiskey, maybe, in the future?
I mean, close to the vest. We are corn, rye, malted barley. Don't take this as answering that question, but we are doing innovation out there. You saw the malted rye and things like that. So,
yep.
But our focus and success has been on corn, rye, and malted barley.
Let's see here. Trying to go through some of my Patreon questions here. Let's see. Let's see. How much of their stuff did they? Okay, yeah, we talked about that. Kind of think we went through all of it. So, guys, do not sign off yet. We're going to stick around here, but I want to let Dan go here. Ham Turkey says, last question, where do the reject barrels go? Do you guys ever go through reject barrels?
Yeah. Well, first of all, great questions tonight, and I've really enjoyed this. Reject barrels, we could actually go to the beginning of the process that when we're making, fermentations occurring, let's say if something went wrong or our distillate did not meet the flavor profile for the product that we were making, we actually will reject it and send it off site to be repurposed in the fuel ethanol.
Okay.
That's a painful phone call.
I can imagine.
Thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. Again, we've grown leaps and bounds. In 2015, when we began barreling, we were allowed time to figure it out. And if we had mechanical issues or, sometimes things go, it's Mother Nature. And sometimes things go astray. We've had distillate that didn't taste bad, but didn't meet our profile. We discarded it. Power outage one time created issues. We've had them through the years. But yeah, we'll send it off. And then the same thing is if a barrel comes in, and that's the emphasis on our processing operators before it gets to bottling, they'll bring the barrels in, right? And as they'll collect samples, they'll transfer it and collect samples, do an organoleptic test, for sensory, and check color, turbidity, proof, and so forth. If something is out of line, they bring it to our attention. And then, same thing. We have totes. We'll transfer it and then send it off site eventually to be repurposed. So, yeah, we're too small of a brand to try to force things. again, going back to either being a single barrel or a small batch, the equivalent of 20 full barrels. One bad barrel, throw off the whole bad batch. We don't have that ability to blend in subpar barrels, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and again, I know I've said it 100 times, but it's a testament to the quality regiment that we have here. But yeah, if it's bad, it'll be sent off. And again, the distillate, if it's not right at the beginning, it's not going to be right at the end. The barrel does amazing things, but it doesn't make it turn left when needed. You know, if it's not right, it's not going to be there.
Yeah, no, that's basically the answer. I totally I expected, but Dan, everybody in the chat here, hang out for a little bit, not going anywhere, but I do want to let Dan go. He's been hanging out all day at work. But Dan McKee, this has been such a special interview for me, such a special night just to talk to you and learn about all things Michters. I know a lot of people in the chat really appreciated all the knowledge you kind of laid out for everybody. And I mean, what can I say, man? I met you, early spring for a little bit. I can't wait to meet again. But I just want to say thank you for all your knowledge, your transparency, telling us what you could tell us, telling us about all the processes going on at Michter's and why Michter's is such a special distillery. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you. And again, great seeing you again. Thank you for everybody taking time out of your evening to join us and hear about all things Michter's. And again, I do appreciate it. So thank you very much.
All right. Cheers, Dan. Thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it, man. Cheers. Take care. See you soon, man.
See you.
All right, guys. There you have it. Dan McKee from Michter's. What an amazing interview. Holy shit. That was, I pretty much just geeked out on that interview, just being able to talk to Michter's. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I went through, I think, every question I wanted to ask him, and he pretty much answered it. So it was really cool to talk to him and just kind of know the ins and outs of Michter's and what they're doing now, what they're doing in the future. Really, really cool stuff. Before we go tonight, we have about 15 minutes left. I did want to go through some news stories because, I mean, some of this stuff that's coming out, we're getting into this area now here, guys, in August, where now Michter's had just announced, well, we'll get into that news story here. Michter's announced another whiskey that's going to be releasing again this year that I know a lot of people are excited about. But some of my favorite whiskeys that get announced here in the fall time, because we're getting into that time. It's August. It's late August. So fall's coming up, and all the special releases that get lined up in fall are starting to become a little bit clearer. The picture is becoming clearer. So we're going to go through some of this. James Lake, no, I did not ask him where he sourced from because you know what that answer was going to be. You absolutely know what that answer was going to be. So, all right. So I'm going to put on a little background music just because, it's been quiet. I'm going to put a little music on for everybody here. Last 15 minutes. Thank you guys so much. Glad you guys enjoyed the interview. But let's get into some of the news stories this year. And we're going to start with the first one. Just announced. Here it is, guys. The next Parker's Heritage. Heaven Hill reveals latest whiskey in Parker's Heritage collection to honor late master distiller. This is a 10-year-old that would have made him proud. A 10-year-old rye. So Heaven Hill announced the 17th release in the annual Parker's Heritage collection on Wednesday. It's a 10-year-old cask-strength rye whiskey with suggested retail price of $185. Portions of the proceeds for each bottle purchase will go to ALS Research. So again, this is honoring Parker Beam, who is the longtime master distiller for Heaven Hill. This year's edition distilled from a mash bill of 51% rye, 35% corn, and 14% malted barley. Bottle at cask strength, 128.8 proof. Parker laid the groundwork for the series, and we believe this cask strength rye release that would make him really proud. So, I mean, essentially, guys, this is going to be, if you wanted to taste what an Elijah Craig rye would be, that's it. That's the cask strength Elijah Craig barrel proof rye, essentially. So, excited for that one. If the entry proof is over 103, I don't want it. Ham Turkey going all in on the 103 entry proof. That's right. Justin Bice says, "Thank you. This is why you have the best channel out there, and I tune in for every stream." Justin, thank you so much, man. That's really cool. Whiskey Saint says, "What I took from that is M15 bourbon is what I've been drinking." I kind of took that from there too, Durrell. I'm with you, man. Fancy Franchi says, I'm going to need to try that Parker's Rye. I'm right with you. Those bottles are really hard to get, but I'm definitely into trying it. All right, next news story up, guys, because a lot of stuff has come out. This one might surprise you because I'm actually somewhat excited about this, and it is the Blue Run Trifecta. So this is the first release that Blue Run has put out since being acquired by Molson Coors. This is the Trifecta bourbon. Its first release since being acquired by beer producing giant Molson Coors early this month. Now this is a blend of 9-year-old. 32% of the blend is 9 years old. 22% of the blend is 8 years old, and 46% of the blend is 6 years old. This was blended by Shaylin Gammon, who used to work at Wild Turkey. She says she chose to blend the 9, 8-year-old whiskeys as the base, the 6-year-old bourbon for added depth, complexity, and what she refers to as wood heat. This is at 117.1 proof. This just launched on Sealbox today, I believe. I mean, the reason why I'm excited about this release in particular is I like the high age blend. And on top of that, this has probably been the most transparent that Blue Run has been that I've seen. The ages, the percentages of the blend. Obviously, we don't know where the whiskey's coming from, but I mean, we just talked to Dan McKee from Michter's. A lot of people can't tell you where the whiskey's coming from. However, I do like the fact that for this particular release, Blue Run is telling you exactly the percentages and exactly the ages. It's been my gripe with Blue Run for the last couple of years, and I'm glad to see that they're doing that, and I hope that continues. That may start. I'm not going to say it's going to shift my my opinion on them completely, but the fact that they're doing that, I can get on board for that. Now, the bottle itself is going to be where's that price of it? I believe it's like $160 ish, something like that. Let's see here. Where is the price? Yeah, I think it's about $160, $170 for that bottle. Again, the price is very high. That's not going to change with Blue Run, but I will say, $180. It's a lot. But I will say that if Blue Run continues to do more of this transparent release type stuff, I think they're on the right track. That's all I'll say. So look for Dan Shook to have a review in a week. Yeah, maybe. Cellar. Yeah, Maker's Mark Cellar Age is making its way around for sure. I'm going to try my hardest to get one of those for sure. Cancel Blue Run, left my ass up, says Nick Rose. I'd rather buy another FYPV, says Adam Hinson. 180 for a half, 6-year blend. Can't do it, but it's a move in the right direction. And Don Prince, this is probably that's the statement that I'm totally on board for. Is it too much money? Yes. But is it a step in the right direction for Blue Run? Absolutely. If every release that they do can be that transparent, then the money just becomes whether you want to spend the money on it or not. So there you go. The likes butterfly charm is confused, Jason. No, it's not confusing. But come on, guys, you got to admit, when Blue Run is being more transparent, it's kind of a milestone. It's a shift. It's a shift in sensibility of what they've been doing normally. So I'm happy to see them do that, and I hope it continues. And Shaylin Gammon, who worked at Wild Turkey, did some amazing blends there. The fact that she's blending it is fine. I'll probably try before I buy that. So we'll see how it goes. But if I do buy a bottle, it'll be because I tried it first. We'll see what happens. I think somebody is sending me a sample of it because I was like, oh, okay, getting a little bit more transparent here. We'll see what happens. You're telling me there's a chance. You're telling me there's a chance, maybe. All right, guys. One of my most favorite releases of the year has been announced. It's the Four Roses, and that's right. We went into 135th anniversary of the of this release here. Guys, Four Roses, I got the 130th anniversary 5 years ago, and that was my bourbon of the year, I think, at that time. But they have unveiled the 135th anniversary. It's featuring the oldest whiskey in the distillery's history. Look at that beautiful bottle, guys. We're talking about a blend that includes a 25-year-old component, which is the oldest bourbon Four Roses has used in its 135-year history. It's bottled at 108 proof. It will launch September 15th. This will be the 16th in the Four Roses annual series of limited edition barrel-proof bourbons. The full blend is a 12, a 14, and a 16, and then a 25-year-old OBSV, which brings in all the complexity and depth that you want. So the guys, to give you the full percentages, 35% of it is 12-year OESV, 40% of it is a 14-year-old OESK, 20% of it is a 16-year-old OESV, and 5% of it is that 25-year-old OBSV. Hell yeah. This is a $200 bottle when it comes to what the price is going to be. And Four Roses LE, I'm all over it. I cannot wait. If you guys want to join the lottery to try to get that bottle for retail, you can do it right now. The website is open. You can tack onto it, get onto the lottery if you want. I am all over that. All over it. Yeah. Give me that Four Roses LE. Dude, I cannot wait for that bottle. But the fact that it's 135th anniversary and like this special bottling, secondary market prices on that is going to suck. It's going to suck. Just saying. I would expect that bottle at $200 retail to get up to maybe 4 to 5 in the beginning. It might taper off a little bit, but that's going to be a rough bottle. I'm telling you guys. It's just the way the market is. Next release that we're going to talk about that's been announced is this one. Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. Now, you guys know my history with birthday bourbon. Haven't always been the biggest fan, but Old Forester has announced the highly coveted 2023 birthday bourbon release. Here's how it's going to work. Every year, birthday bourbon is a unique opportunity for lovers of Old Forester. Okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah. This year, it's a 12-year-old offering, serving up a classic Old Forester profile that has spent that time developing rich, caramelized, and oaky characteristics. All right. Available at the Distillery on September 2nd. Last year, for the first time, Old Forester did away with the tradition, instead making the expression available beyond Kentucky for the first time. Old Forester will repeat the choice this year, making birthday bourbon available at the Old Forester Distillery in Louisville via a national sweepstakes running August 24th through August 31st, but not available on September 2nd, which is George Garvin Brown's birthday. Those who win the sweepstakes will earn the right to buy a bottle as a suggested retail price of $169.99, a $20 increase from last year. Sweepstake winners will be chosen on September 2nd, and bottles will be available for pickup between September 8th and December 23rd, giving out-of-town winners plenty of time to plan a trip to Kentucky. 12-year age statement, 96 proof. 96. 103 barrels of 2023 birthday bourbon were filled May 5th, 2011, and aged on the 5th floor of Warehouse I. All right. I mean, what do you guys think? 12 years old. The proof on it, though, just kills me. Why is it sub 100? Why is it sub 100? I get it. I'll always trust Jackie Zykin on this aspect. She always said that Old Forester works better at a lower proof. I'm not sure 96 all the way down there is the way to go. I mean, damn. Yeah, proof is not great, says Don Prince. I don't know, man. It's one of those things. I tend to skip the birthday bourbons. I go right for the Four Roses, me personally. I think you're getting a better whiskey, better proof, better product. Old Forester birthday bourbon, as good as it is, most of the time, in the last 5-6 years of birthday bourbon that I've tried, I think only 2 of them I thought have been great. The other ones have been very disappointing. But yeah, I'm all about Four Roses for me, man. That's what it is. Four Roses all day long. All right, next news story, another big release. And one we just spoke about. We just spoke to Dan McKee about it, but it looks like Michter's is bringing back the Toasted Barrel Rye Whiskey. So Toasted Barrel Rye Whiskey coming back for 2023. I'm all over this. I think that I should be hopefully getting a bottle at some point. But it looks like we're going to be seeing, let me go back here. I think they just released it like a couple days ago. Oh yeah, here it is. Full throttle flavor experience. Michter's continues Toasted Barrel trend with new rye whiskey release. $120 retail price. It was first launched in 2014, as we learned from Dan McKee. This year's release is bottled at 108.9 proof. It uses barrels made to exactly its specifications. Again, we kind of went through Dan McKee about this. This toasted rye in particular is a full throttle flavor experience, says Dan McKee. So looking forward to that one. And lastly, I do want to talk about the newest Little Book. The newest Little Book was announced also recently as well. Let me get rid of that. The newest Little Book was announced from Jim Beam. And it's going to be called the... I think it was the... let me get to it. Okay, yeah, here it is. It's going to be called In Retrospect. In Retrospect is the next Little Book. This is 7 whiskeys that are going to be blended for the latest release in the extremely limited Little Book series. The Little Book whiskey series focuses on showcasing blended aged whiskeys with Noah's handiwork. The whiskey series have received its name Little Book from Freddie Nose. Okay, blah blah blah. Suggested retail price of $150. I know you guys don't care about that. You guys care about what's in the blend. Here it is. Little Book. 18-year-old Kentucky bourbon, 17-year-old Kentucky bourbon, 10-year-old Kentucky rye, 9-year-old Kentucky bourbon, 5-year-old malt finished in applewood smoked barrels, 4-year-old Kentucky bourbon, and 4-year-old Kentucky rye. What does this mean? Basically, Freddie Noah is taking everything he's ever worked with Little Book and throwing it into this blend, for the most part. He's not the one thing I wish we had was mash bills and percentages. We don't know how much of that older whiskey is going to be in the blend. I just hope it's not like 2% 18, 2% 17, 20% 10-year, 10% 9-year, and like 85% of 5, 4, and 4. Obviously, I hope that's not the case. But yeah, Little Book Volume 8 F Your Train Edition. What's up with that Old Forester 1915? Says cheese. Yeah, this is a. Where do you even see that model? Where do you see it? You see that bottle somewhere? Basically 1915. Oh, this bottle right here. Here it is. Old Forester 1915. This is a custom-made label. It's a blend of 1920 and 1910. So this has been mingling for, I don't know, about 6-7 months now. It probably tastes pretty good. I'm going to have to do a full review on that. Definitely want one of those toasted rye. Should be called the kitchen sink, says Deborah C. I like that. 7 drops of the 18-year, 12 drops of the 17-year. The Little Book will either be unreal or hot garbage. That's pretty much where I'm thinking. Don Prince, this is what I'm scared of, that applewood smoke taking over the blend completely. That's the thing, John W. We don't know the ratio of that one. So, yeah. But, man, I can't stop looking at this bottle when I saw it, when I saw that bottle, when I saw that bottle, I went full Ron Swanson.
So beautiful.
I was all in on it. I'm like, oh my god, there's 25-year-old Four Roses in it. Give me it. So yeah, guys, a lot of releases coming out. It's getting to be that time of year to be on the lookout for all these LEs, all these limited releases. Number one on my list is going to be that Four Roses. Probably a second will be that Parker's Heritage, and then we'll go from there. We'll see how lucky I get this year. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I want to thank Dan McKee again for coming on, giving us a lot of insight from Michter's. Next week we'll be back again, another live show here next week. But this weekend, if you guys are going to Sagamore, going to the Sagamore meetup, the Mash and Drum, Mash and Journey Sagamore meetup, I cannot wait to see you guys there. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. Hope to see you guys there. And if I don't, maybe I'll see you there. See you next year. I think we're going to do it in Bardstown next year. But love all of you. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Hope you enjoyed the Off the Still episode 2 with Dan McKee at Michter's. Guys, you know, what can I say? Love you. Love the support. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey. It's the people you share it with. See you next week right here on the Mash and Drum. Take care, guys. Love you.